Okay, Chair, we're live.
We're ready to go. Excellent. Yep. Okay. Welcome everybody to this meeting on Thursday, the 16th of September 2021. Transport for the North Audit and Governance Committee. Can I just, in the first place, welcome members, please? And could I ask if you've received, James, any formal apologies?
From Councillor Liam Robinson, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to just say a quick word at the start. We're holding this meeting under the delegated powers under the Constitution that the Finance Director has. The meeting would not have had sufficient board members to hold as a face-to-face meeting, so the decision was made that we would take this meeting by video, and we are glad that members can join us for the video conference, but in order to save unnecessary transport, we thought we could do this meeting equally well by video. Just on the point of chorusy, we have some chorusy issues at the moment due to the fact that the membership of this committee, which is made up of 5 members from the board normally, unfortunately has been reduced at the moment to 2, and we have vacancies. In addition, we are looking to, in the future, expand the number of board members on this committee to avoid future chorusy issues. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear, so thank you. If we can now move to item 2, declarations of interest. Members are required to declare any personal or prejudicial or disclosable pecuniary interest that they may have relating to items on the agenda and state the nature of such interest. Anybody want to say anything on that? Anybody got anything to declare? Okay, thank you. No declarations. Just quickly turning to minutes from the previous meeting. We were hoping that we'd be able to approve these the minutes from previous meetings, 18th of Feb, 10th of June, and 15th of July at this meeting, but unfortunately we can't formally do that at this point because we're not having a face-to-face current meeting. In the event, however, I would like to take any comments or changes that members would like to make at this point. So I'll just run through the pages with everybody, and perhaps you can advise if there are any problems from your point of view. So page 1 of the minutes, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Page 6, Chair.
Yeah.
7.9. I think that reads a bit unclear, and it's picked up again then in 7.10, the actual second point that I made. So the second sentence in the first paragraph doesn't read. It doesn't make any sense as it stands. I think it just needs deleting because it's actually picked up in 7.10.
Okay.
That issue.
All right. Can we make a note of that, please, and amend the minutes accordingly? Okay. Perhaps if you could forward the revision once it's done to Kevin, just for final checking. That would be helpful.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for that, Kevin.
I don't think it needs checking, Chair. It's just, I think it's just an error. It just needs taking out, really, that sentence. Okay, I don't think you need to check with me.
All right. Okay. If you're happy with that, Kevin, that's fine. Okay. Any other changes to the minutes anybody wants to make? Okay. All right. Fine. So we'll take those minutes as read, apart from the changes that Kevin has advised us of. Fine. Now, we need to change the order of the agenda because the council is having to leave at 12 o'clock. So I would like now to change the order of the agenda, and if I may ask our external audit representatives to take the next point, which is item 7 on the agenda. Would it be okay to do that?
Thank you, Chair. Shall I start then with the audit completion report?
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so for those people who haven't met me before, although I think most people have, I'm Karen Murray, the audit partner at Mazars, Transport for the North external auditor, and I'm the person responsible for signing the audit report. It's my name, if you like, that appears in that report once the audit is complete. This report is the kind of conclusion of our audit work, if you like, and pulls together the issues that have arisen during the course of the audit for you. Just to start, I guess, with the sort of headline message really, which is that we intend to issue an unqualified audit opinion on Transport for the North's accounts. There is a small amount of work outstanding, which I'll talk about in a second, but I think important to say really that you know, the accounts this year were prepared to a very good standard by the Transport for the North finance team. So I pass my thanks on to Paul and of course to Ian for the way in which they have worked to produce both accounts and working papers. And I think we mustn't underestimate actually how difficult it can be to do that when you're working largely remotely or almost entirely remotely, as it has been at times over the year. And I think the other thing I just want to comment on really is the way in which the team have engaged with us during the audit process, so that they have done all that they can to respond to us in a prompt and appropriate manner. That can be difficult as well when people have got a challenging workload to deal with, and the working from home and all the other issues. So it has been a really good audit process from my perspective, and whilst it wasn't unexpected that it was good, because we've had positive engagement in previous years, it is worth noting because you know, I do recognise the challenges that the team have been facing. You will see from the audit report that there is a small amount of work outstanding, and if I refer you to page 101 of your papers, just so that everybody's clear, there are 3 things listed in the table. The first is the pensions assurance letter. You might recall this was an issue in previous years as well. I need to get, as your auditor, I need to get some assurances from the auditor of Greater Manchester Pension Fund that the actuary has dealt with the information that you provided in an appropriate way. Just to confuse matters, I am also the auditor for Greater Manchester Pension Fund, so in fact I'm giving myself the assurance. I can tell you that the work on the pension fund is almost complete, but the IS19 letter, as it's known, hasn't been issued yet, but I'm optimistic that we will have it. If not this week, then certainly early next week, and we will then move on to conclude on your audit once your accounts have been put forward. The second thing that is outstanding is the review and closure, and I think just to be clear, there isn't any work required there. It is simply a statement of audit fact, if you like, that I can't close my file down until I receive your final signed set of accounts, and we don't have those until they're formally approved. So that's kind of the audit administration that comes at the end every year anyway. And then the last thing that's outstanding is the whole of government accounts. And just to be clear on that, there is a timetable issued each year by the Treasury and the NAO for that work, and the timetable isn't published yet. I've heard some conversations about it, and it looks like there'll be work that's due at the back end of the calendar year, but not before then. This report picks up on and follows, if you like, the audit strategy memorandum that I brought to your February meeting. And you will see from the reports, and I know that members will have read the papers, so I'll be very brief in terms of talking through, that there have been no changes to the approach that we said we were going to take. So from your perspective as low chargeable governance, that's another positive thing. We've done the work in the way that we intended to, and without identifying further risks or issues to pursue. Materiality remained unchanged. The report then goes through the significant risks that we brought to your attention as part of the audit strategy memorandum. And if you look at the pages from page 105 onwards, you will see that we have set out there a reminder for you of what the risk was, what we proposed to do about it, and then we confirm that we've done what we said we would. So for the avoidance of any doubt really, and just to very briefly summarise, the first significant risk we identified was in respect of management's ability to override controls. You'll be aware, because I've told you in February, that that wasn't specific to Transport for the North or any concerns that we have about the organisation. That's one of those risks that the auditing standards say exists in every organisation, and therefore every audit team should do some work to address. In that respect, we look at all of the estimates that are included in your accounts and the judgments that management make on them. We look at any transactions that are unusual or outside the normal course of your business, and we test your journals, because they are the ways in which management could deliberately, if you like, impact on the way in which the financial statements look and the outturn that you're reporting. And I'm pleased to say that we didn't have any matters arising from the work that we've completed. The second significant risk was in respect of your pension liability. Put simply, that's a very big number relative to the rest of your accounts, and it's also an estimate where you rely on an expert, albeit that expert is the pension fund's actuary. Based on the work that we've done to date, everything's fine. I just need that pension fund assurance letter that I mentioned earlier to confirm that the actuaries dealt with the information that they had properly. I'm satisfied that you've reflected in your accounts the information that they've given back to you. The third area that we looked at was around the intangible assets, and at the time that we drafted our audit plan, there was a potential for there to be a novation of some of the assets to local authorities in relation to IST. That wasn't certain either in terms of where they were going to go or the timing of them, and actually in the event they did transfer to the DFP. We have reviewed the accounting in respect of those asset transfers and the treatment of them as a disposal. We identified one error, and you will see on page 111 that the accounts have changed to change it from an impairment to a loss on disposal. Just to be clear, that's a balance sheet issue that only affects your reserves and doesn't make a difference at all to the Transport for the North bottom line or revenue position. During the course of the audit, we didn't identify any internal control issues that we need to bring to your attention, so that's a positive statement. And you will see in the report that there were a couple of relatively minor disclosure errors that we agreed. So there were some changes made to note 26 around the accounting for grant income, and there were some additions made to the narrative statement, really just to improve the quality and the depth of the disclosures that were included there. They weren't significant omissions, but it was just helpful, I think, to improve. The rest of the report so far as the account goes is really the mandatory reporting that I'm required to bring to your attention. It seeks your authorisation for letter of representation and provides you with a draft copy of the audit opinion that we intend to sign. The report also goes on to talk about value for money, and just to remind members of the committee, we no longer issue a value for money conclusion following the changes to the National Audit Office's Code of Practice. We now just issue a report which considers the arrangements you have in place in respect of three criteria. They are financial sustainability, governance and decision making, and then the work that you're doing to improve the 3 E's, and by that we mean reduce your costs or improve the quality of your services. We undertake a risk assessment to identify whether or not there are any risk of significant weaknesses in the arrangements that Transport for the North has in place, and we keep that under review as the audit progresses to see if any further risks arise. You will be aware, because we included in our audit strategy memorandum, that there was a risk that we identified in relation to Transport for the North around financial sustainability, and in particular whether or not your arrangements were sufficient to allow you to respond appropriately to the reductions in your core funding that were coming through as a result of the financial settlements and so on, and the changes to the work that you are undertaking. This report includes a very brief summary of the work that we've done, but I'm pleased to say that we have concluded that there are no significant weaknesses in your arrangements. That is to say that the arrangements that you have in place for managing your financial position are robust. They will allow you to know and understand and deal with the challenges that you face. But it's important that members of the committee don't misunderstand what I'm saying there. So whilst I think that you've got good arrangements in place to know what's going on, that doesn't mean you've got lots of money. And from my perspective, it is really important that you do address the challenge that is presented to you as an organisation around the fact that your reserves are not going to last forever, and you cannot continue to rely on them as a source of funding. We will produce a more detailed report for your next meeting, which is the full commentary on your arrangements for securing value for money, that will comment on all three of the areas that I mentioned. So not just the financial sustainability, but your governance arrangements and your economy, efficiency and effectiveness approach. But for now, we are just commenting back on the significant weakness that we previously identified. I'm going to stop there, but I will happily take any questions from members of the committee or from Ian if there are any.
Can I just say, pass on my thanks to Karen and to her team for the work that they've done and the manner in which they've gone about it. It takes two sides to make an audit process reasonably pain-free, because there's no such thing as a pain-free audit process, as I'm sure we're all aware. But I just like to put that on record.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Karen. Much appreciated the work that's gone on there. Are there any other questions from members? I can't see any. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, Karen, for the update. And let's move on now, if we may, to item 8, which is the year-end statutory accounts. Just before we go there, it's just important to remind everybody this will be the third time the audit committee has been through the year-end accounts, and I feel as though we have given the year-end accounts a thorough review over the last couple of meetings. So this is the final opportunity, really, for any members to pass any comments through to Paul, who will be taking us through this particular item. Okay, Paul, if you could take it away, thank you.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So as Chris just mentioned just then, the meeting of the 15th of July, we went through the draft accounts in some detail. I think at that meeting we identified the fact that there were items being discussed with the external auditors at the time, and Karen has just referenced them now. The major one of which was in relation to the disclosure of a disposal of an asset to the department. Again, I think probably safe to say it is a presentational matter, but it does require separate disclosure. And through discussion with the external auditors, we agreed that we had originally presented it incorrectly and therefore modified the accounts to reflect that. As has previously been raised by Kevin, you mentioned before about sometimes it's difficult to track significant changes through documents, and certainly large documents. So we felt it would be useful to present the track change document to the committee and highlight the main areas of change, just to make it completely transparent as to where things have adjusted and since the accounts that you saw on the 15th of July. The adjustment was transferring from one line to another line, but because it's one of the more material transactions in the accounts, it was 1.996 million. It does appear in a number of places, so it can, and both in terms of the narrative statement, changing it from being an impairment to a disposal, within the income and expenditure statement, and also the notes to the accounts. So it can look worse than it is, but that's just the fact that it is referenced in a number of places. So I'm not proposing that we go through the accounts, because effectively what we're saying is that they were as they were on the 15th of July, subject to the modifications that Karen has referenced and Karen's referenced in the audit completion report. In terms of next steps, the view would be that we would, if subject to the committee being comfortable with the accounts as presented, we would just clean them up, remove the track changes or accept the track changes, remove the highlights and get them in a form to be presented to the board for signature at the board meeting at the end of September. So happy to take any questions in relation to the accounts or the process.
Any questions? No, I think everybody's. Actually, I've got a question from Kevin.
But it's not a question really. It's just to thank Paul really. Actually, picking up on the track changes, it does make life an awful lot easier rather than ploughing through the paperwork trying to find out where the changes have been made. So grateful for that and thanks.
Okay, I'm glad.
Yeah, here. Yeah.
Yeah, good, excellent. Sounds like the process is working well. That's good. Okay, well, I think everybody's comfortable with the accounts. So thank you, Paul, for all your work, and that really allows us to move on to item 9, which I think Ian's going to introduce, then I'll just take us through the paper. Ian, I can't just hear you.
Yes,
Ian? Yeah.
There was some drilling going on next door, and I put myself in mute. The report item 9 just really sets out what we need to do in terms of the chair of this committee's annual report back to the board. So you'll recall in previous years that we have presented back to the board, or Chris has presented back to the board, the activity that the audit committee has carried out, or the audit and governance committee has carried out, and the extent to which that has kind of fulfilled its terms of reference. So there is a letter that Chris will take you through, which is in draft at the moment, but which with some amendments will go to the board. And then there are 2 appendices, one of which sets out the terms of reference of this committee, and the second of which sets out how the committee's work has addressed those terms of reference. I think it's probably worth noting that the fact that this meeting is now a finance director's consultation call under the Constitution rather than a core face-to-face meeting means that there will need to be some amendments to Chris's draft report. I think certainly just glancing through at 2.4 and at the recommendations at 5.2 and 5.3, but we may be able to pick up some of those as we go. But this will need to be amended just to reflect the nature of this meeting as opposed to the one that was anticipated when this report was written. Chris, the other thing I guess to note is that Chris will have a 5-minute, 10 minutes, however long it takes, slot at the board on the 29th just to present this paper to the board and to make whatever recommendation we can in relation to the accounts.
Okay, thank you, Ian. So Ian set out really the purpose of the report there. I think it's a useful report anyway, even if it wasn't one that we were asked to do, in that it summarises our activity as a audit and governance committee during the year. So it's a helpful document in that sense anyway. However, let me just run through. You'll be aware that the TFN Constitution prescribes a requirement for an audit and governance committee. That's why we're here. And the committee, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, is comprised of 5 members of the TFN board and 3 independent, soon to be 4 members, independent members. Now, as I mentioned, the membership does change depending on elections and people's willingness to come forward and sit on the committee. So at this point in time, we're 2 members down. Committee's terms of reference, as Ian mentioned, are appended, so I'll not go through those, but you can look at those in detail. And during the 2020-21 financial year, the committee met 5 times. Now, this section we just want to revisit, given the changes which we just mentioned. So we'll just review that one. So we'll skip over 2.4, and there is mention, I think, and the uncertainty which TFN operates in, and the fact that this committee is focusing on corporate risk, and we have a standard item on our agenda to do that, which we'll be looking at later on in the meeting. And this report also reports notes to the committee and the board on its functions, and contains a recommendation, as Ian mentioned, with regards to the approval of the statutory statement of accounts. So we will be including that at the end. Progress report and work plans are detailed under section 3. Important to note that the committee focuses on the corporate risk register, financial reporting and constitution reviews. Also important to note is that the committee also requires that instances or suspicion of fraud and corruption are reported to the committee directly. An important function also of the committee is that we consider and approve the internal audit programme, as this is important in underpinning our opinions that we gain at the committee. And we receive regular updates from internal audit to substantiate those opinions. In addition, the committee itself requires a number of items to be looked at as they arise. These have included a review of the anti-fraud and corruption policy, and we included that in the consideration of the annual governance statement. We also considered the importance and the risks associated with COVID-19 and its impact on the assurance framework. Also, a review and a refresh of the Treasury management strategy was also undertaken. Okay, the committee's activities for reference and its terms of reference are presented in the matrix form in Appendix Ii. The internal audit, into section 310, 311, 312, you'll see that the audit, internal audit activity is reviewed there, and our performance ranked into substantial and reasonable. We've just had two reasonable areas. One was contract management and one was cyber security review. The other items there were substantial. So it's important also to note that following the internal audit, we make sure as a governance and audit committee that any shortfalls or recommendations are followed up by management, and internal audit have deemed that particular activity as good progress. So we feel that the committee is able to provide the TFN board with assurance from these reports that the necessary core controls expected of a public body have been implemented in the areas reviewed. Now, I'll just pause here because I think it's important that this is not just a letter from me to the board. I will be presenting it, but it does represent all of the work and all the input that all members of the committee have put forward during the year. So if anybody's uncomfortable with anything in this draft, then please put your hand up and make your point clear. Thank you. Anybody unhappy so far? No? Good. Okay, moving on to external audit activity. Mazars, as you know, are our external auditors. We've just had a presentation, an update from them. The committee receives updates every month on ongoing audit activity, not every month, every meeting, sorry, on activities that our external auditors are engaged with, and they've kept us up to date all the way through the external audit process. As Karen mentioned, Mazars will not formally report their audit findings until the release of the ISA 260 audit opinion to TFN board. So, but I think as a committee, we are saying that we've got sufficient comfort to recommend the accounts to the board for approval. Okay, risk. We review the risk register at each meeting, and during the year the committees reviewed both corporate and programme risks and provided feedback with regard to presentation of the information provided. This has resulted in some changes to presentation of corporate risk, hopefully making it more transparent and easier for the end reader. In February 2021, the committee approved the revised format, and the corporate risk register report was changed. With regard to next steps, the work programme for 2021 is intended to include a number of items. So we're looking to monitor the impacts of COVID-19, monitor transport for the North risk management activity. We want to review corporate governance and consider the preparatory activity. So that was the programme for 2021. Looking forward, the internal audit plan for 21-22 is about looking at governance effectiveness framework, risk management strategy, purchase to pay, flexi-time system, IT, cyber security, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, the importance of follow-ups. So that briefly summarises the activity and work of the Audit and Governance Committee and its future plan through the rest of the year. So having reviewed the findings of the internal audit and submissions from the offices, the committee can provide assurance to the board in the areas reviewed by TFN that we've got a sound control framework that appropriately manages risk. So the recommendations, as Ian pointed out, they're listed in item 5, but we may just need to reword some of that. But I guess in essence, we're basically saying in this report that we recommend that the board approve the corporate governance review, an annual governance statement, and the accounts. So if anybody doesn't feel that that's appropriate, then now will be a good time to say. So I'll just pause there. No, I think we've got general approval. Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, happy with the report in general, Chair. But that 3.23 just seems to read a bit out of sync, really, in terms of it's in terms of it should be past tense, shouldn't it? You know, that it's a work programme that we've concluded. So I think it just needs a bit of reshaping at the front end.
Yeah, take that on board, Kevin. Yeah, appreciate that. That makes sense.
I think that might actually be a typo. I think 2021 should read 21-22, Kevin. Just
All
looking.
right.
Yeah, it's just it's confusing, isn't it? Yeah. I think the issue with it is always that you're referring back to previous financial years, even in you're in another financial year. So, no, we can sort that out. Thank you. Thanks for picking that up. Any other points? No, I don't think we've got any other points. In that case, with that amendment, we'll and the amendments to section 5, we'll take that forward, and if everybody on the committee is happy for us to just make those changes and then submit that forward. Okay, and perhaps we can talk about that after the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Right, that's fine. So that takes us through to item 7, 8, and 9. Now, if I can just refer now back to the start of the meeting and pick up now on item 4. So that'll be you, Ian, if you don't mind, on the monthly operating report.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I won't go through this report in detail because there is quite a lot of it. I think it's probably just worth picking up a few things that are in the executive summary, though. We are in the process of just finalising the operating report for August. The timing of the papers going out for this committee just meant that we had to use the previous month's report. I think a few things to draw to people's attention. One is that the IRP is still not being forthcoming. It is, I think, across a number of Transport for the North documents, it is recognised as being something that we really need in order to be able to progress on a number of fronts. I think that's recognised across the piece, and I think the expectation now is that the sensible time for the IRP to be forthcoming is probably around about the time the spending review will come to fruition, which is back end of October. So hopefully, come the back end of October, we will have some kind of resolution to the IRP point. Although, having said that, there will still be a process to go through to understand exactly what implications that has for Transport for the North and the NPR programme. I think it's also worth noting the Manchester Central corridor work is ongoing. There have been a number of kind of iterative conversations between Transport for the North, local partners and the department in terms of timetable revisions, and I think that work is continuing. There is also some collaborative work going on to try and get a position on the East Coast Main Line timetable that was, I think, some changes intended to be made on the in May 22, but those have been pushed back. But there's quite a lot of work at the moment between our strategic rail team, DFT, Rail North Partnership on various timetable issues, both on the west and the east of Transport for North geography. I think probably the final thing that's worth noting is that the CSR hadn't been announced at the time that this report was written. There is now a CSR in motion. It was announced by the Chancellor on the 7th of September. Departments had to submit their returns by the 13th. They'd been given the heads up prior to the public announcement being made. There will be a process that the department and Treasury and other bodies like TfN who've got an interest go through between now and October. There will be an update on that at the board meeting on the 29th of September. But TfN put in a preliminary submission to the department on the I think the 9th of September. I don't think there's too much more for me to add unless anybody's got any questions on what I've said there.
Can't see any questions, Ian. No, I don't think anybody has. Okay, it's a pretty comprehensive report now, isn't it? The operating report with all the detail in there now.
There is a lot of detail. The executive summary should give people the flavour of the big things that are going on. Obviously, the detail is there underpinning it as well, and there's a financial report at the back which people can use.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Ian. So that's item 4, monthly operating report. So that takes us to item 5, which is the virtual participation in meetings. And if we could welcome Anjit to the committee meeting today, perhaps you'd take us through that. Anjit's the new solicitor.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll just take you through the sort of the brief main points in the report. So this report is brought to committee to inform members of the arrangements that are being put in place for future meetings and a proposed amendment to the procedure rules in the Constitution. So if I may just provide you with a brief background, just leading up to the proposed amendments. Members will be aware that legislation that allowed meetings to take place virtually came to an end on 7th of May. What this means is that the requirements for members to attend meetings in person has been reinstated. And currently, the Transport for the North procedure rules in the Constitution mirror the legal requirements and state that in-person meetings will be required. And there is no provision in the Constitution currently which would allow members not physically to be present in a meeting to join it virtually or to speak at that meeting. So in light of this, the members' working group was to consider the amendments to the Constitution, which would allow members to join formal meetings virtually and also allow members to contribute to the debate at that meeting. I should add that this, of course, would be subject to the required technology being available in place and also in place at the meeting venues. Chair, in addition to that, it should also be noted that members joining a meeting virtually would not be allowed to vote or to be counted being present for quorum purposes. So following on for that, at the Transport for the North consultation call meeting on the 9th of June, it was also requested that members should also be allowed to put forward written representation, should they wish, in respect of items on the agenda, if they were unable to be physically present at that meeting. So following on from there, the members' working group has recommended that virtual participation in meetings should be allowed, with the agreement of the chairman of the committees, and it has proposed that amendments to the procedure rules be made, which are provided at Appendix I to your report. So if we look at this, the effect of this, of the proposed amendments for each committee, so in terms of the Audit and Governance Committee, as the report provides that its core functions are as set out in Appendix 2 to the report. The appendix also identifies the committee's role as a decision maker in recommending approvals to the board, as well as its role of providing oversight, monitoring and review. In addition to that, and it's also has been already referred to earlier in the meeting, to the role of the committee, there's a delegation provided to the Finance Director under paragraph 19.8 of the Constitution to take urgent decisions on any matter within the terms of reference of the committee after consultation with members of the committee in writing or by telephone. Chairman, therefore, for the committee, the recommendation in the report is to note the recommendations of the members' working group, the Transport for the North consultation call, and also to note the proposed amendments to the procedure rules in the Constitution, which are to be recommended to the board for approval on the 29th of April, 29th of September, beg your pardon. Also for the committee to consider how it wishes to conduct its future meetings. That concludes my report, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Yes, Councillor Scott.
Yes, thank you very much. And whilst I did raise this at the Rail North Committee yesterday, that for members, and obviously having to travel to Manchester for meetings, particularly from Darlington and further north, is very difficult. And this was one of the reasons that I couldn't attend in person today, because obviously I'll have to go to Manchester on the 29th. For me to get to Manchester in time for a meeting that starts at 11 o'clock, I've got to leave very early in the morning. So I put in a plea yesterday. Can we please have meetings in other places rather than Manchester? In the past, we've had them in Leeds, and the suggestion yesterday was, why can't we have meetings in Newcastle? I think it is important that we can get together face to face, but I think you've got to accept that Manchester is not always convenient to get to, and particularly cross country. So I would just appeal in future that we can be a bit more flexible at the venue for the meetings. I'm pleased that obviously I have been able to attend today virtually, at least to make the committee quorate for the important decisions that we've made. But obviously this can be, and obviously another member had great difficulty, was not even able to link in today. So can I just make a plea for that for future meetings? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Noted those points. And in fact, in the past, we have held some meetings in Leeds and also in Sheffield. So we're not averse to moving around a little bit. Okay, so we'll take those that point on board. Okay, have we got any other questions? I did see somebody with a hand up then for a second.
Yes, David and Keith both have hands up. Chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Chair,
Well,
yeah.
Can we go to Keith first then?
Okay. No, I'll give way to David. He had his hand up long before I did.
All right, fair enough then, David. Away you go.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Chair. I think a point made in these proposals is about the availability of technology. And if my memory serves me correct, I'm not sure our places that we've been to, that when we go on our travels, would be amenable to having people video in. I mean, that may have changed over COVID, but when we've been to the town hall and things in Sheffield before, I don't remember seeing the facilities to have people video in as an active member of the meeting. And I just thought that might be something we might have to sort of do a feasibility study of places that we may go to across the region, on the proviso that they have to meet the standard that people can video in to them.
Yeah, understand that. I mean, absolutely. There's nothing more annoying than trying to do a video conference when there's failures running through it all the time. So, yeah, I agree with you there. I think we do need to definitely test the appropriate venues. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. If we could bring in Keith, you were next, I think.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I mean, Councillor Scott, like myself, as an elected member, will have her diary, gets poached by Tom, Dick and Harry, and puts appointments in just because they can say there's a space. And that's what often happens to elected members.
Yeah, it's a hazard of the profession, I guess. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I might have just lost you there, Keith. But I think we do need to take that on board and make sure that we can accommodate people in the best way that we can. I've got another question actually from Kevin. If I could just bring you in.
Yeah, I've just some questions and comments, really. I suppose it seems to me that that from what Manjeet is saying and what the papers are saying, that from a legal perspective, we can't approach a blended option, which in other hats in other organisations, a blended approach is being explored and being utilised as a sort of third option, if you like, between virtual and face-to-face. Had a question around 19.7 and why items sort of A, B and C would insist on a face-to-face meeting, when it seemed to me that they were neither making formal decisions nor recommending approvals to board. So I wondered whether that might just, if we could revisit that, and whether that would give us a bit more flexibility in terms of managing out the year, the calendar of meetings in terms of virtual versus face-to-face. And the sort of final point was, well, two more points really. One was around, could we manage the agendas in such a way that we could corral all the items that need face-to-face into one or two meetings per year that would be predetermined, and therefore would allow elected members, particularly elected members, to manage their diaries, effectively, and to sort the travel issue out, because I've recognised that issue for the last 3 years, really, that it's a key issue for elected members. And that sort of brings me round to the final thing around quoracy, because obviously this is an issue for the committee. We're not going to be able to conduct business effectively if we're constantly hitting up against the dilemma of not being quorate, and so I think that's a further issue that needs a bit more review. Whether the answer is more elected members, so that we've got a better chance of being quorate on any given day. I don't know, but it's certainly problematic, isn't it, as it stands? So we haven't been able to meet face to face today, regardless.
Margie, do you want to come back on any of that?
Yes, Chair, I can. Just in relation to sort of 19.7, of course, Appendix 2 is provided as the Constitution provides at the moment, sort of the role of the committee being decision maker and review and monitoring and oversight. So, of course, Appendix 2 can be looked at in light of planning future meetings. And of course, it's an important note that future planning would involve and also ensuring that technical facilities are available for planning future meetings as well. And of course, that would include exactly what the purpose of the meetings, future meetings are. And of course, those could be grouped together as to which ones should be face-to-face and require decisions to be made. But the point to note is that for purposes of quorum, as stated in the report, that only those members who are physically present in the meeting would be counted towards quorum. And any members who wish to join the meeting virtually, but to take part, will not be counted as part of that quorum. So it does allow that flexibility to members who are unable to attend to take part in meetings. But there is still an important issue of quorum, as it's already been pointed out.
Thank you. Yeah.
Chris, it's Keith. If I might just come back.
Yeah, sure,
there is another alternative, and with Rail North, which I sit on, as well as the board and the partnership board, we have on occasions where timing has been appropriate, had all three meetings on the same day. So you can meet at 9:30 in the morning, and I appreciate the point that we all make. I've got a 3-hour journey, possibly down into Manchester sometimes, but it might be appropriate sometimes just to try and arrange a meeting in the morning and have a second meeting in the afternoon, so that you've taken off the full day, you've travelled once, and you've completed 2 or in some cases 3 meetings, and it gets it moved on. And particularly for elected members, I think that can sometimes work as well.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Sorry for dropping out before. I don't know what's the matter with the system.
No. Okay, thank you, Keith. Yeah, take that point. I mean, fitting more than one meeting, if you're doing a lot of travelling or travelling a long way, it seems like a better use of time if you can fit 2 meetings in at the same place. And that might mean trying to fit meetings around the board meetings then, perhaps. Okay. Right. Thank you for everybody's input there. Any other questions on this paper? Okay. Clearly, we need to consider all those points and try and find a better solution going forward. So we'll no doubt be discussing this more further down the road. So thanks for everybody's input there. Thank you for Mary. Okay. If I may now just take us to item 6, internal audit update. Alex, are you taking us through that?
I certainly will be. Thank you very much. So you have 3 papers from us today. The first one, well, we've got the 2 reports. If I just highlight the progress just to start, and then I'll take you through the reports. We've issued 2 assignments since the last meeting. So you've got the governance effectiveness review, which we provided reasonable assurance. And if you recall, at the last meeting, we talked about just extending the deadline to increase the number of questionnaires that were completed in regards to that one. The second one we have is the risk management strategy review, which we provided substantial assurance. So both of these areas you've been provided with positive assurance in regards to these. The risk management strategy one, if you recall, was part of the audit plan as a result of obviously the change in the system that's being used, and making sure that the framework has been aligned to the change and move to that new system. You have obviously full copies of the reports in your pack. In regards to where we are in terms of delivering the audit plan, it's progressing well. We've obviously one review that's been completed ahead of time to bring to this committee, and we're progressing well with the remains of the audit plan, and we continue to have ongoing dialogue to make sure that the audits that we deliver are in line with your risk profile and, having that agile approach to delivering your audit plan. As I said, there's no changes to the audit plan as it stands, but we'll continue to revisit that. If you're happy, if I just move on to the governance report, just to give you a bit of an overview, if that's okay. So in regards to the governance effectiveness arrangements review, as I said, we've provided a positive opinion, so it's a reasonable assurance opinion. We've included 5 low actions and 2 medium actions. We've established that there's a robust framework, and obviously some of the discussions you've had today around making sure you're aligned to the Constitution is really important and demonstrates, the consideration of that. The actions we've included in our review take into consideration the feedback that we've had through the questionnaire, and really looks to, as I said, 5 low actions around just enhancing the framework that you've got in place. There were 2 medium actions which takes into consideration declarations and inductions, which links into some of the feedback that we've had on the questionnaires. I'll pause at that stage. I'll take it as read, but I'm happy to take any questions on that review.
Don't think we've got any questions. No.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So I'll move on to the risk management strategy review. Substantial assurance. There were only 2 low actions included in this review. Acknowledges the movement to the new system and making sure that what you have in your risk registers is aligned to the new system. So it's just that transfer over, and then also just making sure that the risk management strategy, which is the next stage once you have a system in place, is to make sure that that is reflective of the new system and how the approach to using that system. But very much, you'll recall from previous meetings and in previous years that we've continued to revisit risk management to make sure it's effective and that you have that ongoing review of the risks that you need to manage. I'm happy to take any questions on that review.
No, I think it's pretty clear. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Overall, it's a positive report, so from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, very reassuring to get that feedback. Much appreciated. Gives us confidence on the committee when that work's been done, and that's very, very pleasing to hear that. As it is all of the internal audit work, because we do see this as identified in the paper earlier as a very important element of reassurance really to committee members. So appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Alex, you want to mention?
No, nothing from my perspective. Thank you.
All right. Anything from anybody else on the committee? Kevin.
Yes, sorry, I should have perhaps mentioned it earlier. In terms of the 4 questionnaire tool that you used, Alex, and the number of returns, is that? I suppose it's just a question around the sort of validity of the the conclusions that you can draw from that sort of analysis, and whether you had any sort of observations on that. So quite a low turnout, wasn't it, or return?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Kevin. Thank you for your question. I mean, we did extend the deadline, and sometimes depending on the timing, you can have a good uptake. Sometimes it is lower. I think from our perspective, you're right, is you have to look at the numbers in comparison to how many you've issued to take and draw conclusions. What we do is, as part of our testing and looking at the design and application, particularly around the governance arrangements, we've done observations through the virtual element, is really then look to see if there's any themes coming out. So certainly when we looked at inductions and the documentation, that was certainly something that was raised by some individuals. So it's pulling those through. But you're right, as I said, you do have to look at the conclusions that you have in terms of questionnaires and that perspective.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. That's really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks all. Can we Move to item 10 then now. That's the risk review. And Paddy's not with us today, so I think, Ian, you're going to take us through the risk paper?
Yeah, and just one thing, Hattie's actually, after 5 years at Transport for the North, Hattie's actually going to be leaving us before the next audit committee meeting, so this would have been her swan song with the committee. So I just like to put on record my thanks to her for all the work she's done over the last 5 years. She joined at a time when TFN didn't have much in the way of well, it didn't have much in the way of anything, but didn't have much in the way of risk management practice. So yeah, I'd just like to thank her for all her hard work. If we're just turning to the report, the board, as people will be aware, reviews the risk register every 6 months, so it's a twice yearly operation. It is it's a report that this committee sees at every meeting. So what I've tried to do, or what we've tried to do in the cover report, is again draw out where the changes have been made from the previous version that the committee has seen. I'll go through those in a moment. I think it's worth dwelling a little bit on some of those changes. We've taken a slightly different approach to the track changes approach that Paul set out earlier in the accounts. That's really because of the difficulty with actually making sense of the risk report once it's had all the amends put through as track changes. It just makes a very messy document. So we've taken a slightly different approach here. So in terms of the report itself, I think there's a number of things worth just highlighting. I think the first is that we've actually lowered the underlying COVID risk in terms of the risk around significant numbers of staff being impacted. I think it's become apparent just over certainly over the last few months since vaccination, the vaccination program kind of got to the point it's got to, that we're not seeing significant levels of COVID related absence or issues with either our colleagues or with supplier staff that's causing any significant problems with our programs. That's not to say that risk doesn't exist, but certainly the indications over the last few months are that it's not. It was a lower risk than was previously in the report, so that has now been amended. On the same theme, there's another mitigation being added. I think what probably is more of the reason we've not taken COVID-19 out together, apart from the fact that would be tempting fate, I think, is that it has had demonstrable and recognisable consequences on the programme of government policy pronouncements. So there is quite a lot of policy positions that government is withholding at the moment, largely I think as a result of the pandemic and the financial issues caused by the pandemic. I mentioned the IRP earlier, but there are others. So that has been recognised in the mitigations. The post-mitigation levels of risk for risk 3, which is embedding the STP, and risk 7 have also been assessed. I think they were probably higher than they were assessed as being higher than they actually needed to be, given the mitigations that are now in place. I think those are areas where we have control over our own destiny. I know it's been discussed in this forum previously, that the extent to which some of our risks are not entirely controllable by us, and that the mitigations are not completely within our control either. I think these are two areas where that is not the case, where we do have more control, and I think the revised risk levels that we've worked through reflect that. There's also, I think one thing I probably do need to just draw attention to is that given timings, there was a review of the strategic rail risks underway at the point at which this report had to be published. So there are some additional changes that will go to board. Those are largely reflected in the monthly operating report. So the strategic risks, the risks that are included in the monthly operating report for the strategic rail team are the ones that will appear in the corporate risk register that goes to the main board on the 29th. it's just to add a couple of risks, one around TRU integration and another around the timetable, some of the timetable issues that I've mentioned previously in my monthly operating report summary around Manchester Central Corridor and the East Coast Main Line. So I feel as I've been talking for a reasonable length of time there. Oh yeah, there's probably possibly one other strategic rail risk that's worth mentioning, which is the Shapps William Shapps review and the TfN response to Great British Railways. There is clearly a risk in there in terms of TfN's dilution of TfN's current role in the rail industry. I think it's also probably worth noting that there is also an opportunity there, and that you know, Transport for the North and partners are working quite hard at the moment to pull together a case for DfT and government more broadly in terms of how we might be included within the new operating framework for Great British Railways in a way that can add value to the system overall. So I think that those were the main things I wanted to draw out. I don't know if people have got any questions that they'd like to or comments that they'd like to make.
Thank you, Ian. If I could just come in there, I am aware that Graham Bell, who is here as an observer today but will become an independent member shortly, has forwarded to the department a number of questions. So just wanted to confirm that they're being dealt with.
He's forwarded those to myself and Hadi. I've responded to Graham. I was hoping if we'd met face to face, I could have had a conversation with him about it. But Hadi, hopefully, when she's back, hopefully that would, you know, within reasonable time horizon, hopefully we'll be able to pick those up. If not, then we will need to, when we get the new risk manager in, then those will be something that we need to address with the new risk manager.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Okay, on to the meeting then. First question from Kevin.
Yeah, Ian. You mentioned a few changes to the risk in terms of where we're particularly around COVID, and you mentioned one or two others. What I can't see from the way this is now configured is that direction of travel as to whether the risk has increased or decreased.
Right. Okay.
And I don't think it's in the narrative either, is it? It wasn't something I'd picked up on until you mentioned it in your introduction. So I just wonder whether there's a way in which you could, you know, just simply sort of indicate, might be an arrow sort of thing that just says this is you know, decreased or increased since the last report. That would be quite helpful, that direction of travel, I think. Yeah,
I mean, obviously it was those points I've just gone through were included in the cover report, but I accept there's a disconnect between the cover report and the actual report itself, and the latter is more likely to be the one that people are focusing on. So we can certainly put where we've got changes from the previous report. We can put an indication of the direction of travel. Obviously, the changes that we put in for the 29th of September board meeting report will be from the previous report the board has seen. So there will be a greater number of changes that we report to that board than are included in the report to this committee, because obviously you've seen a version more recently than they have.
Okay, sounds like a good suggestion. Thank you. Yeah, always good to know which direction we're travelling in. Thanks for that advice, Kevin. Any other questions from members? No, I don't think we have any more in. So I think unless there's anything else you want to add on risk? No? Okay, good. Right, that takes us to item 11, any other business. I've not been advised of any other business, but just take this opportunity if anybody wanted to raise anything. No, I think we're okay there. No other business. In that case, we'll close the meeting there. Thanks to everybody for joining us, and we've tentatively got the next meeting in the diary for Friday, the 19th of November at 11 a.m. We, as we've mentioned on numerous occasions through this meeting, we do need to make sure that we get appropriate number of people here. So let's test that out. If there's a problem, we may have to change it. But at the moment, if people can put in the 19th of November, that's a Friday, not a Thursday, into the diaries, that'll be very helpful. Thank you. Okay, well, thanks everybody, and we'll see you then, all being well. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Bye. Bye.